Hello, I'm Chris from Discount Aquarium Fish and Reef in Tempe, Arizona. One of the questions we often get asked at the shop is, how can I set up a bare bones starter saltwater aquarium? This often comes from freshwater people because we carry both, and just those wandering in off the street, wondering about the hobby and thinking about starting up but don't want to invest a lot and get something easy to go with. First off, you need to purchase your tank. I recommend going used. You can go to Craigslist, you can go to OfferUp, you can go to Facebook and search for aquarium groups in your area. They're always listing used equipment. That way you can get a good deal on something and not need to spend as much on your setup. This here's a 20 regular, which means it's a little bit taller than a 20 long. I don't recommend going smaller than this. You have more trouble with your water parameters and you're really limited in what you can put in the tank. Going larger is of course going to take up more space and start to cost more money for all the components. So this is a good happy medium in the middle. This tank has drill holes in the side here. I'm just using it for illustration. Obviously you'd want to purchase a non-drill tank for your starter. I recommend, as far as filter, rather than going with a canister, using a hang-on back filter. AquaClear was purchased by Fluval. That's my favorite brand. These use a sponge that you can wash over and over and over again. You can put carbon or any filter media on top of the sponge. A lot of the other hang-on back filters use proprietary slip-ins. You have to replace those. They come with a little carbon in them, but not really enough to do all that good. So I much prefer using this filter. So if you can get an AquaClear, that would be something good to start with. Once you've got your tank and your filter, you are going to want to have some lids on the tank. Generally, if you have an option when you're buying, this is a plastic lid, has a space in the middle for your glass, fits on the top of the tank. But if you can, glass lids are a little better, mainly for putting light on them because there's more area. You can use different types of lighting without dealing with the small strip for your lighting. So glass lid, if you can swing that instead of the plastic. Lid's going to help you with evaporation, so you won't need to add as much top-off water. And lid also is necessary if you plan on having any fish that are jumpers. For some reason you don't have a lid, just ask when you buy the fish, are these prone to jumping? Look it up on Google, whatever. Make sure you don't put fish that are jumpers in a tank, obviously, without a lid on top. As far as lighting goes, most of the time when you start up a starter saltwater tank, you're just going to have what's called a Fowler tank, fish only with live rock, and that means you're not having coral in the tank. This is just an inexpensive fluorescent light, which often comes with small starter tanks that you might buy used. You can get away with using that light. If you decide to add a little bit of coral down the road, you can always go and upgrade your lighting a little bit. Middle of the road would be something like this. Make sure buying it used, if it's got some blue lights in there and white lights in there, chances are it's fine. If there's some red lights in there, it's mainly used for planted, and that's going to cause you some algae problems. You can also jump up to a lower level clamp-on light LED that produces more light for corals. These clamp on the back of the tank, shine down, and that's another reason I select a 20 regular instead of a 20 long. 20 regulars, usually this has enough light spread for them, whereas a 20 long that's 6 inches longer, it gets a little harder with one clamp on. So the 20 regulars work a little better for that. Also, you're going to want to get a heater. Normally you can get by without one. However, if you end up using this tank after you upgrade, which you will, as a hospital or quarantine tank, which it would be great to keep for that, you usually heat the water up a little hotter in those. And if you keep your house pretty cool, heaters are cheap, might as well get a heater to have in the tank. You're going to want substrate in the bottom of the tank. I recommend using 100% Argonite substrate. This is Carob Sea special grade reef sand. Most of the time you can get a store to prorate you some if they only have the big 40-pound bags. You're going to need about 20 pounds, cost you about 25 bucks. But you're better off going with some new rather than some used rinse sand because the tank's small. If you needed a ton, then used is sometimes the way to go on your larger tanks. Once you have your sand and it's placed in the tank, you're going to want to buy a small amount of live rock. Live rock is going to give you some algae already starting on it, some beneficial bacteria, some microorganisms and whatnot. And for a small tank like this, I often find like some nice pieces that are very airy and porous, which means they're lighter, they're going to hold more bacteria and more micro life. I just buy like 3 pieces when I get a tank going like this. I set my pieces in the tank. That one's got a little swim through hole on it. And find a position. That one's got a little arch swim through hole. Then I find a larger rock that's kind of flat on the bottom. And I'll usually find a position where that's going to stay together without any gluing or anything like that. Gives you kind of a nice little rockscape without getting too extensive. Some swim throughs for the fish. Gets you started with that live rock on the tank. I don't like to skimp on starter bacteria. This stuff's pretty cheap, $13, Start Smart Complete, $8, Aqua Vitro Seed. There's many different brands of this that you can go with. That's really going to get you off to a good start. You'll continue using the bottle every week until it's gone, and that's going to keep your nutrifying bacteria in there, and it's going to help develop the tank without going through a lengthy cycle before you can add a couple fish in there to get started. So I definitely recommend buying that. As far as water to fill the tank, if you use tap water, which I don't recommend, you're going to need to get something like Chem Prime to dechlorinate and help detoxify that water. I recommend you go to a store and you buy what's called RODI filtered water with salt premix in it. It's usually going to be about $1 a gallon. RODI is normally like 50 cents a gallon when it doesn't have salt added to it. For a small tank, that's not going to cost you that much. I would just go ahead and get that water. A lot of places, if you buy a water jug from them, they're going to go ahead and fill it up, throw that in for free. You will need to borrow some other jugs or go to Home Depot and buy some buckets so that you can get, you're going to need a little less than 20 gallons because of your rock and sand, but so that you can get the water to fill up that tank. If you do buy a container from the fish store, that's good because you can use that after to buy their RODI water and have that for top off, so you're not adding garbage that comes with tap water, which in the long run will start to cause you problems on the tank. So you're going to fill this up with pre-mixed salt water. You're going to add your starter bacteria. I do recommend using a product like ChemiPure Blue, a little better than just straight carbon. Has resins and what's called granular ferric oxide in there, which helps with phosphates. These are only like, this is like $15. You can use it for 2 to 3 months, then throw it away, put another one in. Especially because you're not using a piece of equipment generally called a protein skimmer. It helps to have that in there helping you to reduce water changes and things of that nature. So get the ChemiPure, put it back in the filter, get yourself up and running. As far as test kits go, you really don't need to buy one to start with. Most aquarium stores will test your water for you, let you know how things are going with that. You want to especially do that if you're getting to the point, which I wouldn't recommend for a month or two, where you're going to be adding some corals. Get the water tested, see how it's going, salt level. Make sure you're all set for success with those corals. Upgrade your lights at that point, and you will be ready to go. I hope you've enjoyed the video. And if you do have any questions, please look us up on Google. We have Instagram, Facebook, we have a website, we have email, we have the phone at the shop. Lots of ways to get in contact with us, and we'll be happy to help you answer any questions. We want you to be successful, especially with your first little startup saltwater tank. Have a great day. It's been nice filming for you.